are live on Facebook.
Hey, good looking.
Hey, I just appreciate that,
You
Smitty.
talking to Tim?
Thanks for that.
No,
I did do my hair tonight.
I was talking to my wife.
That's
Yeah,
always
all
the
right.
first thing to do when we go live.
Should have brushed your teeth.
We do that
Yeah.
before bedtime. All right, Larry.
All Things Unexplained. Hosted by Dr. Mounts,
Let's face it, we were always ready to roll without him anyway.
CJ Derringer,
Ain't nobody perfect, right?
and Smitty Neebs.
I've never planned out hardly anything my whole life. I just free ball.
Featuring Cajun Man.
I'm just old nobody, somebody looking for somebody.
Hey, all you unexplained ones out there. This is CJ Derringer here with my co-hosts, Dr. Tim Mounts and Smitty Neves. Hey, fellas.
Hey, it's
CJ,
good to
how's
see
it
you.
going?
Oh, going well. You know, every time I hear Cajun Man at the end of that intro, I just think we need to get him on here. We need to interview Cajun Man for sure. I miss
Yeah.
that guy.
We've
I
got
don't
to
know
check
that I
it
could
out.
ever get his number right again, though. His
I mean,
number's
we only
probably
got
There's
to
some
off
him
irony in that.
completely.
thanks to the error in your number to begin with. But
Yeah.
so excited for tonight's show. We've had some awesome interviews the past few weeks. For those of you that haven't checked them out yet, please do go download our podcast, All Things Unexplained, wherever you listen to your podcasts, because we have had just some really exciting and interesting, lots of listens and feedback and comments. And we're excited to have another interview tonight. So this evening, we will be bringing on Jonathan Fink, who is the author of several books. He has 3 volumes of the book, Baseball Gods. The Baseball Gods Are Real. Have you guys read your copy?
Yes. It's
I've read
good.
it. It's great. It's fantastic. I love the
It's
chapter
wonderful.
on UFOs. Love the chapter
Yes.
on
Yeah.
Ghost.
It had a lot of good information about baseball, which of course I'm a big baseball fan anyhow. And
Are
it's
you a big baseball
very
fan?
Yes. I used to coach high school baseball.
Oh, really?
And I played high school for a year, and of course I played little league. I've coached little league. I've done all kind of different stuff with baseball. But
By the way, we have
So the
only-
listener. We have a listener, Edward Willikins, with us. He says he's got some interesting experiences on tonight's topic.
Oh,
okay,
please share
That
those
sounds
with
good.
us. We would love to hear what they are, and maybe we can even bring him in at some point. So Smitty, just 1 year of high school baseball playing, that's all the experience you needed to be a high school baseball coach?
Well, I played for 15 years little league. Around
Oh,
here,
okay.
you're born with a bat in your hand, pretty much around Mississippi. So you
For many
pretty much
reasons.
know on a baseball, and so you learn baseball from the time you can walk almost in Mississippi.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. Little league is all over the place, and I just decided to focus on football, so that's why I did 1 year of high school baseball.
Oh, gotcha.
And
Yeah,
then
you're
played
built
4
for
years of
football. I can
football.
see that.
Yeah.
And Tim, how about you? What's your experience with baseball?
Lots of baseball. I grew up, like Smitty said, playing Little League, and I transitioned over to high school baseball. My high school career ended quickly. Then I transitioned to adult softball, and my goodness, have I got the adult softball stories to tell. I actually dabbled in coaching high school baseball one time. I'm checking in with Jonathan Fink, the author we've got on with us tonight. He's having some technical difficulties at the moment, so we may have to give him just a little bit before he joins us. But interestingly, my adult softball ties connect strongly to this show.
Do they?
Absolutely.
To this very particular episode.
Well,
Yes.
to our theme in general, especially because one of my favorite teammates from adult softball years past was none other than, I'll just say his name was similar to Buck Rogers. How about that? The famous
You talking about the barefoot softball player?
Yeah. Yeah, you will see a hardcore player now. You know, Jonathan Fink may talk to us about being in the zone at some point later. Buck Rogers was always in the zone, son, because if you can play adult men's softball barefooted in jorts,
Uh-oh.
then you were hardcore, let me tell you. And interestingly, he always batted cross-handed. I could never figure that out, but that's something going to hit with power. So do you know what I mean by cross-handed? So he was right-handed, and a right-handed player, the left hand is supposed to go on the bottom of the bat, right?
Right.
But he batted with his right hand on the bottom of the bat. But dude could hit with power. He had natural power. You may recall Buck Rogers is the one that had the near-deadly encounter with none other than Possum Head Man. Looks like we lost Smitty. Smitty's joined us again. Okay, Smitty, welcome back. Let's see.
I'm back.
What happened?
Something kicked me off. I don't know what the deal was.
Well, our Arthur Jonathan Fink is having some trouble logging in already. And a matter of fact, whoa! So we do have
kicked off.
We do have some feedback here from listener Edward Millikins. So back when he was at Mesa Community College, he was the person doing the scoreboard, and while doing the old school scoreboard, which reminds me a lot of Wrigley Field, of course, he would cheer them on like crazy, dancing up there. And because of his cheering, they managed to go all the way to nationals. That's awesome. Sadly, I was not able to go to nationals since I'm not in the team, and they lost by 1 point in the nationals. You could say the baseball gods love that I cheer. I think I got to retell that for Jonathan Fink. He would love to hear that story.
I know. That's a great story. That's actually very similar to some of the stories in his book about fans and how much sway they have in it. I have a little background in baseball as well.
I know.
My first job was actually... No?
We need to save that story.
Well, no, I wasn't going to tell that story. I was not going to tell that story. I was just going to say that my first job ever was at a minor league baseball stadium. So.
Oh, I know. But we can't tell that yet. We got to save that.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah.
I love to go see the Montgomery Biscuits. They actually shoot biscuits up into the audience.
That is. Don't talk too much about that, too, because I was going to bring up the biscuits.
Tell him.
But no, that was one of my favorite minor league experiences, so I hope to talk to Jonathan about that, too, is that going, and let me see, I think
they are wrapped in tinfoil. They're not just shooting like biscuits up there.
So I'm
curious.
It's a pretty awesome experience to go see the biscuits.
Our Edward Willikins, I think, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, our follower on Facebook that's watching right now.
Right.
How often did Edward attend those games? Were you an avid fan? Were you there every single night? I know that you did the scoreboard, but do you go to games now? How much do you really love baseball?
I don't know what's wrong with mine. Y'all keep going in and out your voices.
I have a sneaking suspicion, so it is one downside of Ecamm Live, which is what we use to produce this show, is that it is only as good as the weakest person's internet.
Well, now that I've moved,
I've got good internet,
great
internet.
So
that must be.
So
some of you Chapel Hill folks.
Arthur is still having trouble connecting. I may just have to call his phone. Let me offer that up to him.
We're actually going to get some new internet this next week.
Well, I tell you what, this podcast is going to go to a new level.
So
when we get
CJ,
new internet.
Sorry, Smitty, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I didn't hear what you said either, Smitty.
did you play softball?
Nope, I grew up playing volleyball. The only time I ever played softball was as an adult. I joined an adult softball league. I was not
Yeah.
too bad,
I used to
to be
coach
honest.
high school softball too.
Oh yeah? You've
Yeah.
done it all. You've
I
coached
coached
everything.
softball for a year in high school.
He was known as two things, Mr. Technology and the Renaissance Man.
Oh.
What? I didn't catch
Edward
that.
says he's got way more stories. We need to get Edward on here.
I know. we
Get
really
Edward on
do.
this call.
So are you off? And Smitty's gone again. I'm telling you, he dare not say he's not the weakest link in all
I got
this.
plugged into that fancy AT&T thing that's here in Chapel Hill now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's why I think that you and I are rolling here. And Smitty, welcome back, Smitty.
I'm sorry, it keeps kicking me off for some reason.
What could the reason be? I wonder. I'm gonna. we're gonna have to bring in that recasted Smitty at some point if this keeps up. I'm gonna call Arthur Jonathan Fink and try to patch him in that way.
Okay.
And if this doesn't work, we're gonna maybe stay. Oh, Edward Millikins, I'm here on my way to an event by bike. We better not get him to call in.
I don't know what's going
Okay.
on with my
Riding his
my
bike.
Can I
internet.
just
It's
say
usually-
how much I appreciate that he is on bike listening to our podcast
I
and
know.
chiming in.
Shout out to listener Edward Willikins. He said, "Let me tell them I can't make it." So he
Well,
can
we
share
need to get
his
him one of those
experience.
fancy tinfoil hats of ours.
Oh, we certainly.
Oh,
have
yeah.
to make that video.
I've
In
got to
fact,
get
that
it
might be our
done.
episode this week if we can't get these technical difficulties fixed.
Yeah, go bust out the aluminum foil, Smitty.
Yeah, I need to go stock up on some. I grilled out steaks this weekend. I had to use some aluminum foil. It made me think of those hats.
Oh,
So we
that
grilled
would be
out
a great
some
promo.
nice big sirloins. Yeah,
Okay.
my son went in there and got a bottle of ketchup and ate his steak with ketchup. I about got sick.
That seems sacrilegious. You talk about the steak gods are real. That will get you in trouble with the steak gods.
That will get you in trouble.
I guess we could
yes.
sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game."
No, I've done a lot of that in my life.
Arr. Why? Let's see. Add left, add right. Okay, Skype person. Smitty, CJ, were you saying something?
Oh, nothing of any importance.
All right, I'm gonna try to give Mr. Fink a call here. Don't say his number out loud. Oh, Smitty got booted again. Smitty, welcome back.
I'm back, man. I don't know what keeps going
We're
on.
just trying to
My
call
internet's have
Mr. Fink.
it's hitting a good speed test.
Mm-hmm. I just got to make sure I don't. And if this doesn't work, we're calling Cajun Man. All right, here we go. Y'all hear
Cajun
that
Man.
dialing?
Cajun Man.
Jonathan. Jonathan,
How you
how's
doing?
good? How's it going? Thanks for joining us tonight.
It's my pleasure. Are we live right now?
We are live. We appreciate you joining us. And CJ is with us right now, and my co-host
Hey,
Smitty is with us.
Jonathan. Good evening.
Hey. Hey, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for being flexible. I apologize. Our video does not seem to be working correctly, but we've determined that it could be Smitty's dial-up. He actually literally still has dial-up, and so it's kind of restricted.
I do not have dial-up.
But we do the best we can.
I'm going to dial you up.
Well, Jonathan, we are all very excited to chat with you about your book. Thank you for sending each of us a copy. What was that? Jonathan, are you there?
We might have lost Jonathan. I'm going to ask him to try the video one more time. And then we'll just try again.
Okay.
Another time. And if this doesn't work, we're literally going to see if Edward... Oh, wait. Edward's riding his bike home, then he'll be ready, he says. Interesting.
Oh, nice.
And listener
What a
Dinah
sport.
Croft says Coach Neves should give her extra points.
Who
I
says
agree,
that?
Dinah.
Oh,
Dinah
it's
Croft.
Dina.
Oh, Dina
Dina.
sees us. There I go, copying Tim. What a mistake.
Dina?
Are you giving students extra credit for watching our show? That's brilliant. All of your students should
Oh,
get extra
I didn't
credit
plan on it,
for
but
watching
that's a
our
pretty good
show.
idea.
That goes
Possibly
for
right.
you too, Tim.
Well, thanks.
If they need to play junior high basketball for mounts, they might get 30 or 40 points, on their final grade.
Hey, that was good for all parties involved. Okay.
That may be so. The only bad class he had was history. He was not doing well in history. So.
And that extra credit of write a paragraph about your favorite history was, I thought he did a brilliant job on that.
Yeah.
Write a paragraph about your favorite history.
That was literally the question.
I wonder what he's up to now.
Yeah, don't say his name.
Like, what were some of the options?
I'm not going to. Oh, I don't know. This has been like 13.
You want to know what the options were, CJ?
I don't know.
Have you ever seen Jeopardy on Saturday Night Live where Will Ferrell is?
Oh, yes. Of course.
It was those kind of options, like words that start with rhyme, or just write. Yeah. Final Jeopardy is just write anything. Write anything down, and it will be correct. That's Final Jeopardy. And then Sean Connery might draw a picture.
Or Sean Connery. Write it down. Alex Trebek.
That's a pretty good.
They ought to have Bane on there. Well, Batman.
I'm going to send Jonathan. Oh, Edward suggests that Jonathan Fink, author of The Baseball Gods Are Real. Volume 3 is what we were discussing tonight, The Religion of Baseball. Edward McWilkins suggests he may need to restart his computer and internet. Not a bad idea.
The fact that Edward is hanging on with us through all of these technical difficulties just shows what a dedicated fan he is.
Oh, I know. Shout out.
Corroborating his baseball story.
Shout out.
We hear you cheering.
Sure.
We hear you cheering from the sidelines, Edward.
I cannot get Twitter to load whatsoever right now, which is really weird. But CJ,
What's
this might
Twitter?
be a good time to tell. You know, Smitty, did you know CJ has professional baseball experience?
She said she worked for a minor league baseball team.
Well, I think work
Let's
is
not
a
take
bit of
it
an
too far.
understatement. I worked for the Durham Bulls, but I was collecting like tickets and such. That's working for the organization. CJ was literally a part of the organization, critical to their success.
Well,
Oh,
okay,
what
let's
did you
not go
do?
too far. I might have been the mascot a time or two. I was the
Oh, really?
Jethawks
That's
mascot, Kaboom. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that was not how I got my start there. I definitely took tickets and
Jonathan is joining us.
cleaned seats.
We have Jonathan in the green room. This is exciting.
This is exciting.
We literally
Batter
had a
up.
listener who was riding his bicycle to a sporting event, I think. Is that what he was on his way to? Turned around on his bicycle. I wonder, surely it's nighttime where he's at, and was about to volunteer to come on as the guest tonight. We literally have no idea who Edward Willikins is, but he was.
But Mesa Community College, that sounds like Arizona to me. So it might not be too late there.
We
wow,
owe
we could talk to
him
about a lot of stuff in Arizona. How about we bring Arthur Jonathan Fink on? Y'all ready?
Let's do
That
it.
sounds
Smitty, can
awesome.
you give him a perfect
Let's go.
baseball announcer next step to bat?
Yeah, before you do, Smitty, this
Next
is Jonathan
up to
Fink.
bat.
Hold on, Smitty, author of The Baseball Gods Are Real. We're just particularly discussing Volume 3, The Religion of Baseball. Now, Smitty.
Stepping up to the plate, a right-hander from Leawood, Kansas, Jonathan Fink. How'd that sound?
Hey guys, great intro. How you doing?
I don't know if you. It may be a lefty. I don't know.
Hey,
Thanks for having me, guys. I
good to
appreciate
see
it.
your
Great to be with you.
face. Yes,
Love the
so happy
Are you
to
a
have you
lefty?
background
here.
there.
Yeah, look at all of those flags behind you.
Those were great. We
See
actually
them all.
had
I got a whole collection.
Those are awesome. You know, we actually just had a listener relaying some of the baseball miracles from his experience, which were pretty cool.
Right on. I'd love to hear all about him because I'm still writing books, and so his story could be another chapter in a new book to come for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. So you have 3 books already, full of all kinds of stuff, full of just all of the different rituals and theories and all of the good and the bad that has happened in baseball. But there's more out there. You've got more to write about, huh?
Well, this book, Volume 3, was a little different than my other books. And by the way, I also have a music series called The Music Gods Are Real, which we can get into because all my books have spirituality and paranormal, unexplained things in them. So what I find is that my books are kind of a vehicle to talk about spirit. And whether it's about music or baseball, the material just keeps coming. And so with Volume 3, it was a little different. It's a true nonfiction, research-based book where as I've been collecting stories and pieces of information all through the years. Then when I had enough material, I was able to create this book. But the rest of my books are all nonfiction, true life stories based on my adventures with the music gods and the baseball gods, which is a nice word for spirit, all things paranormal, unexplained. And I plan on writing books about investing and politics, some of my other interests. But baseball was a great topic and a great vehicle to use because so many paranormal things happen in baseball, and baseball is so interconnected with the United States and American history and culture. I noticed, you're wearing that Cubs shirt. 108 years to win a World Series. They were cursed. They had to break that curse. So these are things where, we all know about curses and we know about these paranormal miracles and stuff, but we all can relate to baseball. So when these paranormal events happen in baseball, it's special. And I have my son who is a feature main character, if you will, in most of my baseball adventures. And I say I'm keep writing more books because his road to the show as a baseball player continues. He's only in 8th grade. he's now getting letters from colleges inviting him to showcases and camps. And so every time he gets another invitation to go on a trip, that's another Baseball God adventure. And without a doubt, everywhere we go, we seem to have what I call Baseball God moments, these experiences that are serendipitous and it's synchronistic, and it's hard to explain how they happen. When they do, it's the real deal. So this book was research based, and I'm also moving on to some fictional stuff as well. But yeah, I felt the need to share these stories, like all your guests and through all your podcasts. These true life stories resonate, and you're building up a body of evidence, right? All these unexplained things, and my book is chock full of unexplained events. But again, it's not just baseball; it's also music. It's really everywhere. But certainly, yeah, baseball is a fun area to really dig in and explore those paranormal moments.
Yeah. What I love about your book, on our show, we discuss a ton of unexplained phenomena, but we don't really do anything to try and explain it ourselves, call us lazy or what. But we just let people kind of tell their stories, and then we discuss them, and we're not looking for answers. But it feels like in your book, you've taken all of these potentially unexplained moments in baseball history and tried to give them meaning and purpose or a reason behind that. Does that seem fairly accurate? With at least this book is the only one I've read so far, but it felt like you tried to explain some of these moments in baseball time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like we're living in this holographic simulation, this 3D reality we call life, this world, this planet we're living in, planet Earth. And so the idea is that spirit or God, however you want to use these terms, it's everywhere, all encompassing all the time. But what I found is that, for most of my life, I was an atheist. And when you're an atheist, you can't open your heart and mind to spirit. And so you don't expect miracles to happen in your life. Life crisis in 2012, I got into yoga and meditation. And it wasn't until the meditation became a big part of my life that I sort of opened that portal, right? That portal to spirit, where you can have a direct relationship with God or spirit, or however you want to call it. And then once you open up that portal, it continues to flow, whether you're seeing angel numbers, or just yesterday, my son mentioned he might want to play baseball for Coastal Carolina. And then today he got a letter in the mail from Coastal Carolina inviting him to a baseball camp. How's that even possible? Right.
Wow.
And the way it's possible is because
cool.
my son, who is he's a wonderful boy, but he's also very spiritual. He's very connected to the universe. He meditates, he prays, he gets it, right? And so he is learning to manifest. And when we get to witness these moments, like he literally mentions Coastal Carolina, and then the next day we get a letter in the mail. I mean, how's that even possible unless there's something going on beyond this reality? And so I'm not sure I have any of the answers like some of your guests. They just have experiences, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But I am trying to get to that conclusion of what is this mystery? Why are these things happening? And how do you tap into it? And how the flow kind of comes and goes. When I write, in a way, I feel like I'm channeling, right? You hear about these channelers who, speak in front of thousands of people and they're channeling a spirit entity. I don't channel a spirit or entity, but I'll be honest with you, when I'm writing, it's late at night, I got the candles on, I've just done a meditation, and then I just start typing and the ideas just start to come and they start to flow. I really have no explanation for that, right? I mean, the same way when someone sees a UFO for the first time, it's unexplainable. But once you kind of open that Pandora's box, then how do you not want to keep being a seeker and try to figure out what is going on here, and how are my loved ones who have passed away able to send me signs, and somehow interact with us in this reality when someone should be dead, right? And maybe the idea that death is something that we misunderstood. Maybe death is something different. Maybe when we die, it's a different vibrational frequency. Right, and just like gravity, you can't see gravity, but you drop a book and on your foot, gravity's real. So this is the adventure that I'm on, and from someone like me who was an atheist most of my life, and I was a sarcastic atheist and I was an angry atheist, but it wasn't until I got into meditation that I started to interact with this holographic reality, and that's where life gets more interesting. Just look at this. This is 5 books that I've written, all in the last 2 or 3 years, and each book is 21 chapters, 6,000 words. How did I even do that? And by the way, I've written 9 books. I have 4 more. And so in a way, the fact that I'm an author, yeah, I've written before. I wrote in college. I've always loved music and baseball. But the fact that I've already produced this kind of volume work is proof that that paranormal is real. And in a way, anything that's paranormal, I think you can just say God is real, because all these paranormal things are happening in this 3D holographic simulation reality. And the term God I don't love, because most people are taught that God's this guy hanging out in a cloud, got a big beard, wears a white outfit, he's got a cane, and he's always wagging his finger, telling you what you did wrong. And that might be true, but what I've come to learn is that maybe God is that energy, that beautiful, intelligent energy that permeates all things. And then within that giant soup, sure, there are angels, there are demons. It's all in there, all just beyond this reality. The thing that a dog, can hear certain sounds and pitches that we can't.
Oh yeah.
This is what it's all about. So I have a day job. I'm a financial advisor. I run my own investment firm, and I love managing money, and I love politics and geopolitics and investing. But this book writing career has become a true labor of love, because once I awoke to spirit and that there is something going on that I cannot explain, I just want to learn more about it. And so when I'm not writing books, I'm reading books, and I'm on YouTube and I'm learning. I'm watching podcasts like yours, because this universe is awfully mysterious, right? And I love your podcast name, because it really is so beautiful, because there are so many things that are unexplained. But you're right, trying to figure out what is happening and how and why. Maybe it's all quantum mechanics, right? It's something like that. Sophisticated science behind it. But yeah, I'm determined to get to the bottom of it and keep digging. But the simple answer is I like the term spirit. It's spirits behind all of this. Whether it's ghosts, UFOs, all these different topics that I talk about in my books are paranormal, and it's a great way of just discussing God. And by the way, in my other books, I have tried experimentations with prayer, and I've had my prayers answered. I've used meditation to connect with people. In fact, in my Music God series, the chapters all came to me kind of like a download from spirit. And in that book, I knew in Baseball Music Gods Volume 1, I wanted to interview a band that had music and had a culture that encapsulated a lot of the things that I'm trying to write about in my books. And I realized, I'm going to write about this band called Twiddle, one of my new favorite bands. They're very spiritual, super awesome guys. And after 2 or 3 days of meditation and prayer, I was like, Spirit, I want to interview Twiddle. Please help me do that. And then 2 or 3 days later, their tour comes out from their winter tour in 2019, and they're coming to Kansas City for the first time ever. And it's like, what? How's that even possible? And then, of course, I wound up contacting the band, and then I interviewed them, and then you have to read that music story to get to that. But I traveled all over the country with that band. And it's just proof that music gods are real. The same with the baseball gods are real. But again, how is it possible that prayers are answered, that meditations can manifest? These things seem impossible to me, at least for most of my life. Those things seem impossible. And when you hear about people who claim these things, they have to be making it up. But I'm telling you, I'm street nonfiction in my life, and I never asked for any of these adventures, but maybe now I do, because once I've tapped into it, it's so much fun. My son gets the idea of Coastal Carolina, and it's a random school from South Carolina. And then, and we're going to go to their event. They're coming to Olathe, Kansas in July, with a few other colleges to recruit. So how do I explain how my son got a letter from a school he mentioned the day before? It seems impossible to me. But the answer is God, I think. It's simply that.
And, Jonathan, so we have our listeners are really into what you're saying about prayers. They totally agree with you. They say prayers are powerful. That's straight from our listeners, including Edward Millikins, our listener of the night. And I'm fascinated by something you've mentioned here, Jonathan, and that is this term synchronicity. And I'm fascinated by synchronicity, and I've already experienced it tonight just in talking with you. And I'll tell you what I mean before I ask you this question. You mentioned your son and going to Coastal Carolina. You may not be aware of this, but CJ and I are actually based in the Carolinas. CJ just moved back to the Triangle area of North Carolina from Wilmington, North Carolina, on the coast of the Carolinas. And so we're very close here to coastal Carolina, and so we actually see quite a bit about
Yeah,
them in the news.
you're giving me the chills. So that
Oh,
right
I'm
there
telling
is a synchronicity. You just
Right.
nailed it.
And something else you mentioned was about how do we hear from loved ones who have moved on? Well, CJ and I, Smitty will be teaching, unfortunately, but CJ and I actually have an interview scheduled soon with an expert in EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, which some people believe is a connection to voices of people that have went on, from this life to another realm, another dimension, however you want to look at that. So to me, that was hitting on a lot of cylinders of synchronicity. But for our listeners who aren't familiar with this term, Jonathan, could you give in your mind, what is the definition of synchronicity?
Yeah, the term synchronicity was coined by psychiatrist Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in the history of the world. And Carl Jung described synchronicity as events interconnect that have nothing to do with each other, but only you know that connection. So the example is that you guys are all from the Carolinas. I could have mentioned any school that was recruiting my son, that he had an idea, and then they mailed him a letter. I could have said Washington State University, which is also true, by the way. That happened today. But if I had said that, it wouldn't have been synchronistic. The fact that I mentioned coastal Carolina, which is in your backwoods, that's the synchronicity, because it connects those two things together. And what I love about synchronicity is, I like to think of, the angels up in heaven, or the other dimension, other realms. I like to think of it as just like God. They bend time and space, right? So even though there is free will, they know the events that will be happening tomorrow afternoon. Now, there's free will. You can make a decision and choose to do something else. But typically, spirit knows what you're doing and what you're thinking, what that person's thinking, and they're looking at all those quantum possibilities, all the different timelines, and they are able. I think that I'm sure of it now because I see how they do it. They're able to arrange things so that you will have that synchronicity at the right place at the right time to have that proper thought, which is actually going to help you in some way, whether it's going to validate your existing beliefs. Sometimes for me, I have synchronicities that help me write, but I'm looking for a quote to use for a chapter. The synchronicity will happen that will lead me to the right quote. So you can use synchronicities as just a wink from the universe, as God saying, yep, just let you know that there's something else going on in this reality besides you and your 3D life. But it's also a way where your angels, your spirit guides can help you through your life, connecting with the right people. If you're looking for a job, it's the right interview, it's the right things right on your resume. It's all those different little hints from you and winks from the universe. And you can use those to help guide your path. Now, again, it seems so crazy when psychics read tea leaves, right? It seems so preposterous, ridiculous. But maybe there's something to it. But maybe it's not even the leaves themselves. Maybe it's the person who's reading the tea leaves. They just have, a claircognizance, a clairaudience, a psychic ability. And so whether it was tea leaves or whatever thing they were going to use, these mediums, these channelers, they're tapping into spirit, and they're going to extract that information one way or the other. But what I like is I believe that we all have, an entourage of angels helping us, and they are sending us signs and trying to show us, don't make a left turn here, make a right turn there, or don't apply for that job, apply for this job. But if we're not in touch with that spirit, you can't connect with it, and then it's sort of like you're not going to get the signs and the signals. And I find that the body is this vehicle, and so how does the spirit flow through? Well, it really can't flow through if all your chakras are kind of clogged up. If you're eating fast food and drinking lots of beer and, doing lots of drugs and having lots of negative thoughts and your chakras are all blocked, the Holy Spirit can't flow, and then you're not going to get the messages. And so on my spiritual path, I've tried to do that. Not always perfect. I have my setbacks, but I'm a vegetarian. I'm trying to become a vegan. I'm trying to, I almost never drink alcohol. I'm trying to eat healthy. I'm trying to do as many things as I can to kind of purify my vehicle. And yeah, I feel better. I feel healthier and happier when I do that. But I also do it because I know that as I purify, more spirit flows through. And when I go a week or two without synchronicities, I wonder what I'm doing wrong. Did I not meditate? Did I forget to meditate? Did I, because when you do meditate and you do purify, these things happen in more abundance. So I just think it's a fascinating thing, and I wish more people could tap into it, because I think life becomes so exciting and enjoyable when you live your life. Like, every day is a mystery of what's going to happen, and every day can be a miracle too. A lot of that has to do with your thoughts, starting your day with positive affirmations. You don't have to say them, but just think them. But the vibration, the vibrational frequency that you live by, that you put out to the universe, that's what comes back to you. So I guess if I was a curmudgeon, always negative, which I was for a period of time in my life, was with my first book, universe will bring you more of that same energy. I mean, you're optimistic and positive and looking forward around the corner because something always good is going to happen. Don't be surprised when good things start to happen. And so that might be the power of positive thinking. But end of the day, it goes back to CJ, which is what makes that power of positive thinking actually work, right? That's what's so amazing to me. So to me, it's not just power of positive thinking. It's people who have positive thoughts are tapping into that ether, right? And when you tap into that ether, you know, you're going to get back what you put in. And so the thoughts, the right actions, that's a way to extract from spirit, you know, whatever you want. And I guess for me, I never really thought about it until a few years ago, but investment ideas can come from spirit. I mean, my book ideas come from spirit. I mean, how did Elon Musk invent the engine for his first electric car? Where does that idea come from? You know, Nikola Tesla said he got ideas from spirit. I think he called them aliens, right? So, you know, to me, this whole existence is a mystery and unexplained. And for most people, most of their lives, people who have jobs 9 to 5 and they're too busy paying their bills and living paycheck and paying their credit card, not everyone has the time to kind of explore these things. And so I'm grateful that I've been able to have the time to do it. And by doing so, I've been able to, you know, to have a fulfilling life as I continue to, you know, add pieces to the puzzle as a seeker. But then I get to share these experiences with the world, because I feel like these stories should be told, because it just proves that there's something great beyond this reality. And if it's true, then you got to tap into it. And, you know, I'm supposed to be a writer, but, you know, you guys are supposed to do something else, and everyone's supposed to do what they're meant to do on this earth. But by tapping into that spirit, you'll get to what your goals, I think, much faster.
Oh, for sure.
That's a long answer.
Well, whatever you are eating or not eating is working, because you have as much energy as my 2- and 4-year-old children, which is amazing.
So much energy.
I was born with this, and it's actually in the very, believe it or not, in my first book, I write about how my father, when he was a student in the Bronx, in New York, growing up, he had so much energy, just before, you know, ADHD medication, all that stuff. They didn't know what to do with him. He wasn't being rude. He couldn't sit still. They made my dad stand in the back of the classroom and just let him kind of bounce around, you know, and just do his thing, and so he wouldn't bother anyone else. Then when I was born, this energy I've had with me my whole life, and my parents didn't know what to do with this energy, and they didn't want to put me on ADHD medicine, whatever. They got me into karate, and karate classes became a big part of my life, you know, and interestingly enough, it was through karate that I first learned meditation as a high school kid. And it's interesting because I didn't know how to manifest back then, but I was meditating and I was tapping into spirit. And I look back and it's like, wow, things in my life did go pretty well. I was class president my sophomore, junior, and senior year. I played 2 varsity sports. It was like the spirit guides were helping me. I didn't even know it. And then I kind of gave up that stuff for 20 years. And then I felt like my life wasn't as magical, frankly. And it wasn't until I got, you know, 20 years later, midlife crisis, had to find myself again, tapped into that meditation. And that's where it all came. So the enthusiasm is always, and the energy's always been there, but be very careful with this energy, because when I was in a negative doom and gloom phase, I was in a conspiracy theorist phase for many, many years. And that energy with doom and gloom conspiracy theory can take you to a very bad place, you know, but now I've, you know, gotten back to that higher plane of happiness and joy and pursuing that. And so, yeah, this energy, I mean, you're right. I have been working on day. I've been on 2 walks today, did my yoga meditation today. I feel great. I have energy to go right after this, you know. I mean, so, you know, maybe that's the Kundalini energy the yogis talk about, right? I don't know, but I've always been this way.
Wow.
I love it. Well, I want to ask you. Go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say, I love what you say about taking care of your body. Someone I heard say that your body is basically the only thing in life that you are absolutely only going to have one of. You know, people can go through multiple houses and homes and vehicles and jobs, etc. And when you think about the time, right, and energy that people pour in, what did you say, CJ?
Spouses.
Spouses, that's right. And when you think about the time and energy that people pour into those things, but when you then think that, hey, I've only got one body, that's it. And that's the only thing in life that you're absolutely only going to have one of. It should probably be your number one consideration for your time and energy and taking care of it. If your house falls apart, hey, you can go to the repairman, but you're only going to get one of these bodies. So I really love what you said there about taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing to that. My dad used to always say to me, Jeffrey Fink, and I mentioned this in my first book, he used to always say to me in high school, Jonathan, your body is a temple. Now, I thought that he was saying, don't do drugs, don't drink alcohol and stuff. And maybe he did mean that. But looking back now, I think of it differently. I think about it, the body really is this temple. And by the way, I am spiritual, but I'm not religious. I'm not a big fan of organized religion. That's a separate conversation for a different day. But what I've learned is that I don't need to go to a building to find God. If your body's a temple, you can take God and the Holy Spirit with you everywhere you go, right? And maybe I think that's actually how, because in the dawn of time, Adam and Eve, there were no temples. Spirit and God was everywhere. Your body was the temple. And so if your body is a temple, how do you want to treat it? You want to treat it well? You make sure it's clean inside and looks good or do you want to, treat it poorly? And just like, my son who's a baseball player, look, every kid likes candy, drinks soda, wants to do things like that. But there's an old expression that your body is like a Ferrari. So what are you going to fuel the Ferrari? You want to be a ball player? You're going to fuel it Doritos and Coca-Cola? Or you're going to eat fruits and vegetables? It's your choice, but Ferrari will not drive as fast when you're filling it with poor quality gasoline. It's going to drive much better when it's, got the best oil in there and the highest premium, unleaded gasoline, and then it's going to cruise and fly. And so I think that's the perfect analogy. Your body is it's a temple, it's a Ferrari, and you're right, you only get one of it. And if you wreck the Ferrari, that's
it.
That's it. That's part of your karma, and karma is a concept, by the way, that every religion understands. Even Christians, they know it. They just call it goes around, comes around, right? But karma is really a big part of my books. And by the way, it's not just how you treat other people, it's how you treat yourself. I don't think God likes it if you treat your temple poorly. I think Spirit wants us to make our bodies, as amazing as they can be.
Yes. And karma is definitely a part of this book that you mentioned several times. And I do want to dive a little bit into specifics of the book. So as I was reading, you make so many correlations between religion and baseball, right? You've got your zealots and your fanatics, you've got your ball fields and your cathedrals. And when did you make this connection? Was this like an aha moment for you of, look at all of these people attending ball games, just like some people attend church, and those that are sort of worshiping some of these baseball players in many instances and worshiping gods, what have you. When did you make that connection?
That's a great question. And I never really thought about it before, but as you're asking it, the answer came to me. The seed was planted as a little kid watching baseball movies. I'm getting chills right now. The Field of Dreams. That movie was about death and the afterlife, right? And so from that movie, I think the seeds were planted. But then even as the years went by, like the movie Major League, a comedy, it was Joe Boo, the Cuban refugee. He was superstitious. He built a shrine that he would pray to, right? So I think that the idea of the religion of baseball, maybe the aha moment came, as I started writing my first book, but definitely the seeds were planted long ago because I've always, the term the baseball gods, I grew up hearing that term, announcers say it, you hear coaches say it, fans say it. And so I was always around the religion and the religion of baseball. And I guess I was always been, as you'll see in my books, about this baseball to extract out all the spiritual elements to them. So I guess the seeds were planted as a little kid, watching The Natural and Field of Dreams, all movies that were paranormal and baseball in nature. And then when I moved to Kansas City and I met John Perrin, who I featured in my first book, he was my apprentice. He became my son's pitching coach. And his life and mine, crossing paths, created lots of synchronicity and miracle moments. And that's when I started to realize, oh yeah, I'm going to write a book one day about all this. And in fact, the book that I just wrote, Religion of Baseball, is the book that I first had the idea of. But then as my adventures with my son and with John Perrin started to become interesting, that became the first couple of books. And so the truth is this volume 3 wouldn't have been ready 4 or 5 years ago. I needed so much more material. As you'll notice, I reference, for example, freak injuries, for example. That chapter, I reference some of the classic examples of freak injuries. But then you'll notice I also reference what's happening in 17, 18, 2019, 2020. I get all the most recent stuff to show that baseball as well transcends time and space. And the things that were spooky and paranormal back then, they still continue to this day because God's forever, Spirit's forever. So I literally would create a file. I had a file for freak injuries, for ghosts. Every time my son would email me a link or I'd come across a story, I would print it out, put it in the file. And then at some point, I looked at my files and they were all this big. And I said, I have enough material. And I probably spent a month just going through all those articles, the ones that I collected over several years. And then, of course, all the books that I've read over the years that, about baseball, legendary stories of ghosts and curses. I'd read those books. And so I used the material for the old stuff from those books. And then all the new material was just from life experience, just being a baseball fan, watching things happen. So many times I'd be just watching the MLB Network and Sin-Cho Chu, he had a 10-game winning streak, and he thanks the baseball guys in the post-game interview. And I'd be like, what? And I'll just, videotape it, and I email it to myself. One chapter. So yeah, the answer is the Seeds were planted as a little kid with baseball movies, but I still am a little kid. I mean, I love the game of baseball as much as I did as a little kid, and I get giddy just as much as then as I do now when my son sends me a story. Just the other day, on opening day, the Detroit Tiger, a player who had blown out his arm. He had a couple years of injuries. He never went to the minor leagues. He went from single A right to the major leagues. And his first at bat, the first pitch, whack, boom, home run. What? How is that even possible? Come on, right?
You talk about that with Tim Tebow in your book too.
Oh my goodness, Tim Tebow's had several miracles. I mean, again, he is living proof of the power of God. He at his first baseball game ever in the minor leagues, a player collapsed, had a seizure or a stroke, and Tebow put his hand on this man and started praying. And a few minutes later, the man awoke feeling fine. By the way, it's not in my book, but it happened again with Tim Tebow a year later on an airplane. Someone had I forget it was maybe a seizure as well. And he went over to the person, put his hand on him, started praying, and the person was revived and fine. Now, Tim Tebow, when asked, said, a miracle? Said, a humble Christian? No, not a miracle. But then he said, as a man of God, that's the gift we get to hope and live by, is that the God we serve brings us miracles. So he absolutely did believe in miracles, but he was too humble to admit that he was part of not one but two of them. But yeah, I mean, Tim Tebow, I mean, my gosh, I mean, just remember when he was playing with in football with the Denver Broncos, he had an amazing moment with the number 316, which is a Bible verse, and all the stats for the game were all 316. And by the way, I have a file called "The Football Gods Are Real." All right, and those stuff get big enough, it'll be a book called "The Football Gods Are Real," because there have been many football god moments. And I have a basketball file as well. Now, again, I'm a baseball guy, but I love all sports. And my feeling is that if the universe brings me enough material about paranormal woo-woo stuff with basketball, then I'm obviously meant to write that book, right? So I have a file and I'm collecting the material, and it's amazing. I'm getting good stuff. The material is all there. And so my point is that this woo-woo stuff is self-evident everywhere all the time. But if you're not tapped into it, you're oblivious. But once you are tapped into it, it's magical. So yeah, so it's just so much fun writing these books. And the same way that I wrote this Religion of Baseball book, I'm doing the same thing with football and every sport. If I can get enough material, there'll be a religion of basketball, a religion of football, because in a way, maybe this is my role on this planet, is to, I manage money, and my goal is to help people buy houses and put their kids through college. That's all important stuff. But also maybe I'm here to be like a messenger and help to create real life stories for people that show that God is real, and it's beautiful. You don't have to go to a church or synagogue to believe that or to buy into it. Just go meditate for a week, 20 minutes twice a day, and see what happens in your own life. Don't be shocked if you start having synchronicity. Now, maybe it takes more than a week. I did it over many, many months before I started to find these serendipitous moments. But everyone's different. My body might have been really clogged up when I first started my spiritual path. I ate a lot of pizza and bagels with cream cheese, all right? So, no one's perfect. And drink a lot of soda and drink a lot. So it's a process. But yeah, so, this is something that, has been with me since I was a kid. I guess the seeds are planted. But now that I'm an author and I'm aware and awake to it, I will continue to collect this information. And if I can get enough information to write another volume like this, I'll do that. But FYI, right now, volume 4 and volume 5 they're more like volume 1, just, personal real life adventures with me and my son and the adventures that we've had over the last, couple of years. And sure enough, the paranormal stuff, it follows us. So, and I guess what's so much fun is for me as a dad, I get to share this stuff with my kids. My daughter's featured in my music books, and they both see and experience these synchronicities along with me. It's not just me. It's not like I'm the only one who's experiencing them. I get to share these moments with other people, and that's what makes it so special. And so I feel like, for all my friends and my parents and, anyone out there who may not really believe in God, maybe you were just taught a different type of God, and the God that I've learned to know and love, it's multidimensional, it's omnipresent, and it's unconditionally loving. And if people are having negative experiences out there, that's probably coming from the dark side, not from the God that I know. So,
right. And we're talking to Jonathan Fink, author of The Baseball Gods Are Real. CJ and Smitty and I read Volume 3, The Religion of Baseball. And Jonathan, I have to tell you, I think CJ and Smitty would agree. One thing we've noticed since we started doing this podcast is there are certain people in this world that paranormal events literally follow them wherever they go. We recently talked to a couple who had paranormal events in California. They moved to Arkansas, and literally it followed them there. They had no idea it was going to happen, but it happened. And more paranormal events continue to follow them to this day. And we've seen that with many people that have been on this show. Now, you mentioned baseball movies. What's your number one baseball movie?
It's Field of Dreams for sure. Field of Dreams, and then Major League, which I also mentioned, is my favorite baseball comedy. But Field of Dreams was actually on this past week, and you flip through the channels. When I come across that film, I just gotta watch it to the end because it's by the end you cry. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah. Smitty,
what about you, Tim and Smitty? Yeah. What are your favorites?
Smitty, what's your favorite?
The Natural. The Natural.
Love The Natural.
With Robert Redford.
My favorite scene from The Natural is reminiscent of my own personal favorite scene from adult softball at Topsy, Mississippi, when I hit the outfield lights with a home run, and I was just like, man, this is my natural moment right here. But so it's my favorite scene, obviously. Shout out to Topsy, Mississippi, also a home of Possum Head Man. CJ, what's your favorite?
Oh, I grew up on baseball movies. Now that we're talking and I'm thinking about it, I watched The Sandlot and I watched Angel on repeat, but my go-to favorite is definitely A League of Their Own. I love that movie.
Oh yeah, another good one. Yeah.
Bang the Drum Slowly is a good one. Most people probably haven't seen that, but that's a
I'm
good
gonna write that down. I haven't heard that one. Banging the Drum Slowly.
Bang the Drum Slowly. It's actually got Robert De Niro and what's Angelina Jolie's father's name?
John Voight.
Yeah, John Voight. He's the pitcher. And Robert De Niro's a catcher, and he's dying. And it's a really good movie. It's kind of sad, but it's a great movie.
Cool, I'll check that out.
And I was thinking about, you're talking about your accidents. I was thinking about Dizzy Dean, how he had the line drive in the All-Star game, hit him on the toe, and it ruined his whole rest of his career. He broke that toe.
Injuries. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of freak injuries. Sorry, keep going.
No, but he broke that toe, and then he had to switch his pitching style, and it literally blew his arm out eventually. And he didn't last 2 or 3 years later. But I mean, he was on one of the greatest teams, the Gas House gang, the Cardinals. I think he won 30 games that year. And then he did that, and his career was never the same.
It's interesting.
It's pretty
injuries
interesting.
happen. I mean, injuries happen to players all the time, but when they happen frequently and when they happen in freaky ways, then I think it's not a coincidence. I think it's spirit, trying to get your attention. My book in the Freak Injuries, I read about how, look, when you're a ball player and you got a broken ankle and you're in your bed for 2 months, doing nothing, thinking about the game you miss and you love, you're also being retrospective, thinking about your life, the choices you've made, the good and bad, and things you might do different. And during that time of introspection, you might come across things that maybe were not becoming, or things you wish you didn't do or you regret. And, look, spirit, likes forgiveness. And so I think when people forgive them, not just others, but forgive themselves, those are the kind of things that release, the bad karma and the curses go away when people, get right. So yeah, freak injuries are an interesting thing, and they continue to happen. In my book, I feature a crazy story that happened with the Kansas City Royals, my favorite team. Ned Yost, our manager, was out hunting on the offseason, and he fell off his shooting porch, and he was bled to death. We had a pitcher who was fixing his barn in Oklahoma, and he fell through the barn all the way down and broke several bones and missed half the season. Weird, these are not injuries that are just happening. Oh, because you pulled a hamstring around second base. These are injuries that are happening in freak ways. And now, of course, Ned Yost, he was out there hunting, killing animals. Maybe spirit doesn't like you, doing that, right? The guy on the barn, I don't know what his karma might have been, but there's bizarre about freak injuries that I think is interesting. And I even say in the book, if you're a healthy ball player and your life is good, skip the thoughts will manifest. But however, if you have been getting injured a lot lately and in freaky ways, read this chapter very, very closely, because there might be a reason to.
And we just had a listener with an interesting theory for you, Jonathan. So, listener Edward Willikins said that sometimes spirit puts us into bad situations to change our minds about something.
Oh wow, yeah. That is well said, my friend. That is right. Let's get that for a second. If our lives were all just roses and rainbows, will we have any spiritual growth? I'd say probably not. Buddha was the first to say that, and by the way, Jesus said the same thing. Suffering is a prerequisite for spiritual growth. Now, why is that the case? It's the same reasons that freak injuries make you introspective. I think that's a really keen insight. So well said. Thank you. Good stuff.
Also, I don't know if you're aware of this, but do you remember Mark the Bird Fidrich, the pitcher? I
remember the nickname the Bird. I don't remember what he's known for, though.
He actually was killed in a freak accident. I think he was working with his tractor or something. He got hung up like in the PTO, and it choked him to death. But he was like one of the hottest pitchers of the time during that period of time. He would actually talk to himself, and people thought he was talking to the baseball, but he was trying to calm himself down, and it was a terrible way to go. But he was one of of course, I don't even know if I was alive when he pitched, but I like to go back and watch him pitch on the classic stuff because he was such a good pitcher. And he was really dominating on the mound. It was pretty interesting.
That is. That's a tough way to go. And death in and of itself is one of those concepts that's hard to get your head around. Why did bad things happen to good people is an interesting question. But again, maybe bad things happen, like your listener said, bad things happen, so we have suffering, and through those setbacks, that's where we find ourselves, and that's where we gain spiritual strength to move on. And a lot of times, Bruce Springsteen had a song. He said, how's it go? One step forward, two steps back, right? Sometimes the universe is going to hand you bad cards, and not only will it create suffering, maybe it's a test, and maybe throughout your life you get tested. And it's funny, when I was a kid, I would study for a test, but I would say, Jonathan, when you get out of college, your life is a test. Every day is a test, right? So I think that's a good point, that setbacks in life, suffering, barring the suffering from death. The Bird, he didn't have a chance to redeem himself. That's just how his soul conscience was to go out, I guess. But that's a tough one. But yeah, I like the idea that that while there is free will and nothing's preordained, that the idea that maybe God does, throw us curveballs, right? To use a baseball term, because it's through those curveballs that we strike out, We fail, we suffer, we collect ourselves, dust ourselves off, get back on our feet, and we try again. And that's always what it's all about. Even as a dad, I always tell my kids, look, I don't care what you get on your test. I care if you tried your best. You tried your best, and you got to be honest. Well, you tried your best. That's all you can do. But if you didn't hustle, if you didn't try hard, and then you didn't do well, then that's on you, right? So yeah, it's all a mystery to me.
I take that back. It was a truck, and he got caught up in the power shaft. But he pitched for Detroit. He was like rookie of the year. Had a 19-9 record. He was a pretty good pitcher, and he had some of those things that you talked about. These rituals that they go through. He would fix the cleat marks on the mound. He would crouch down on the mound. He would talk to the ball. He'd talk to himself, and people just like to watch him pitch because didn't really know what he was going to do. He was very unpredictable, and he'd even take and act like the ball was a dart. He'd aim it like a dart and then did throw. So he was a very interesting individual.
Yeah, that is interesting. About the Birdman. His nickname was the Birdman, wasn't it? Was it the Birdman? Was that Dennis?
Mark the Bird Friedrich.
The bird. Yeah. Well, the idea of superstition and ritual is interesting. Some have said that the best athletes, they're all spiritual and religious. And when you think about a superstition or a ritual, that there's something paranormal in a positive way by doing these rituals and believing these superstitions. And so isn't that in and of itself religious? I mean, almost every religion has rituals. They all have superstitions. And so the same way that when Nomar Garciaparra took off his gloves, redid his gloves after every pitch. And by doing that stuff, it's helping reset your mind. It's getting you focused. But maybe it's also helping you get into the zone, right? And when you're in the zone, isn't that sort of like when you're channeling spirit, right? When a player goes into the zone, he can do no wrong. And so these rituals and superstitions, I think, are by design to help players be more comfortable in uncomfortable situations, but also to help them get focused in the zone. And then once you're in the zone, the zone can last, for months, if you're lucky, when you can get into the zone. And players are always trying to get back there. But yeah, the superstitions and the rituals are a really fun part about baseball. But all sports have them, by the way. But it does seem much more pronounced in baseball. The quirky things people do, shaving, not shaving, wearing certain clothes before the game. This is all weird. Alex Bregman once shaved playing the Royals, and he was having a slump. He went to the clubhouse and he shaved, came back, and he got a base hit. And he's like, yeah, how to get out of the slump? I had to shave. It seems preposterous. But sometimes you got to do something to break the funk, get out of the mojo. And a lot of that is energy, right? It's energy, spiritual energy. And so the same way that a player can go into a batting slump, that energy, the momentum can continue. It also can go, conversely. And so when the Birdman was doing those rituals and superstitions, he was doing what he needed to kind of get into that zone. And up until he passed, he had a good career, right? So those things, some will say you're crazy for doing all these little things. But I don't think it's crazy. I think it's just things that players do to get comfortable. And by the way, in baseball and in all sports, so much is out of your control. A pitcher can't control if the umpire is going to call. He can't control if a second baseman is going to make an error, right? So in a world or in a game where there's so many things that are out of your control, the one thing you can control is your emotions and calm. And so those rituals and superstitions basically are what that does for a player. It helps them stay calm and focused so they can control at least themselves, right? And that's the best they can do.
Right. Yeah, there was actually one major league player who they called him, I think they called him the one-man weather delay or something. He took so much time between pitches. It was like an insane amount of time. He would unstrap his gloves. He would strap them back on. He'd rub his bat down. He'd get some dirt, rub on his hands. I can't remember who that was, though. But they called him the one-man weather delay because he was so long in preparing for every pitch. It took it exhausted. Huh? You know who that was?
I don't, but think about the opposing team, right? How frustrated could that batter be waiting for that pitcher for the next pitch? And in that frustration, they're not getting out of the zone and probably will miss that next pitch when it comes, right? It's kind of brilliant.
Oh, for sure. We're
Hey,
talking
by
to
the
Jonathan Fink, author of The Baseball Gods Are Real. And Jonathan, one of the most fascinating, you were talking earlier about players breaking out of slumps. And in your book, Volume 3, The Religion of Baseball, you talked about what I found to be the most fascinating way of all to break out of a slump. And I fully intend the next time I get into a tennis slump or a sand volleyball slump to try to recreate this on my own to bust out, and that is seemingly, for whatever reason, having a UFO encounter is
Darryl Evans.
guaranteed to break you out of your slump.
Yes. All right. So let's get into this. Okay. So Darryl Evans, I even had a couple notes here just to make sure I got to those things. In 1982, he's playing for the San Francisco Giants, finishing the game, goes home on the back porch with his wife, who's a stewardess, by the way, and perfectly clear, twinkling bright. And this UFO comes in, and as most of them do, they hover, right? Because again, if it's just going straight by, it could just be a plane. Who knows? It hovers, kind of lets them know, yeah, I know, you know, and then boom, like a flash of an eye, it zips out of the way. And then, of course, right after that, he was in a terrible slump, starts playing great. Now, by the way, he was already a veteran at that time. And then he signs a new multi-million-dollar contract with Detroit, and then goes on to win the World Series. And by the way, I have another one here. I mentioned, mentioned the book. It's not always baseball where the UFOs show up. It could be golf events. It could be, soccer events. In Florence, Italy, it was in 1954, 10,000 people in the stands, 2 silver objects hovering over the stadium. Literally, the game stopped, not because a ref blew the whistle. Every single player was just looking up in awe because they all saw it. And the ball just moved and stopped moving, and everyone for 20 minutes just stood there, and these orbs were dancing. They even were releasing some kind of like silver particles from the sky. And what's so brilliant about these is that, look, when you have testimonials, guests on your show that see UFOs, it's 2 people driving on some dirt road in the middle of the night. It's only they're the only ones who saw it, right? When you have events like the Mariana incident, which was in Helena, Montana in the 1950s, where 400 people saw the orbs in the sky, or in 1962 in Vancouver, Canada, when 2 minor league teams were playing, and 600 witnesses saw orbs in the sky. So with Darryl Evans, it was just him and his wife, but the proof of it was the benevolence that the aliens gave him, because he went on an amazing hot streak and he became a World Series champion. And by the way, Fiorentina, the soccer team that was hosting that game in Florence, Italy, the next season, they won the championship. What? How did they come on. So maybe there's something going on there. It's incredible. It's incredible. So yeah, so the idea that seeing a UFO, could get you out of a slump. You know what? Sometimes a lot of things can get you out of a slump, but it has to do with changing your routine. And seeing a UFO with your own eyes, that nothing's going to change your frame of mind, your perspective, than something like that. And the fact that he wound up having several more years in the big leagues and playing awesome, winning a World Series, having had that experience, and then, by the way, sharing that story with the world. I mean, he could have kept that story to himself, but he felt compelled to share that story, and I'm glad he did, because it gives people like all of us more vindication and validation that there's something going on up there and all around us, right? And we shouldn't be scared of that, because again, if all the aliens were evil, they would have invaded us already. Maybe they're actually benevolent, right? Wouldn't that be nice? So just plant that seed right there.
Certainly, seeing something like that makes you realize how small you are and how insignificant your problems are. So maybe that does help people refocus what they're worried about and clear their mind a bit in terms of, whatever their slump is, it becomes less significant than before.
Yeah, right on. My mom used to always say as a kid, Jonathan, when you hear somebody else's problems, you'll take your own back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So always be grateful for your own suffering.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
I think this whole notion of encountering UFOs and breaking out of your slumps, it actually has its roots all the way back to ancient times, right? Like if we look back at Bible stories and ancient stories of encounters that people had with heavenly beings or unexplained crafts. You know, in my recollection, quite often they went on to great things for whatever reason immediately after that. And so even all the way back into ancient times, this was a thing, right? Unexplained encounters with otherworldly entities, and your life changes for whatever reason. And it, like you said in your book, The Baseball Gods Are Real, it still seems to be the case.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I want to just mention something earlier that you mentioned about how some of your guests on the show have talked about how these paranormal events follow them wherever they go. So I never knew what a spirit animal was before I got into this book writing stuff. But the Native Indians say that with a spirit animal, you choose a spirit animal or they choose you. So in my Music Gods series, I write about how I used to manage a band called Scarecrow Collection. I then went on tour with a band called the Black Crows. And then everywhere I would go, this crow theme would come up. In fact, when I did a past life regression, I went back to a life where I was a Native Indian, and I was able to find what tribe that was. It was in Montana, and it was the Crow tribe. And in my second book, I write about my adventures to Montana to learn more about the crow. But I can tell you that now crows are birds that are known around the world. They've been around for thousands of years, and unlike some birds that migrate in certain areas, crows are worldly. So to be fair, but I live in Kansas City. But I can tell you that the crows literally come to my house almost every day. I'll be typing something, I get a thought, and I'll hear a crow outside like answering my question. And when I was in Palm Springs last month, the crows found me there. When I was in Texas with my son for a baseball tournament recently, the crows found me there. When my daughter was looking to go to school at Tulane last month, we were in New Orleans, they found me there. And I take video all the time because you can't make this stuff up. And I know when you see one crow, two crows, three crows, you count crows from the old poem. And in the number of crows, there's a meaning. And so it seems preposterous that these crows would follow me around. It's not the same crows, obviously. It's different crows. They didn't get from Kansas to California. But inexplicably, they continue to find me. And if it wasn't for my son to be my witness, people would think I'm crazy. But I told my son, I said, Nate, they're probably your spirit guide too, because they're showing up in your life as well. But the fact that these crows follow me everywhere is just totally bizarre. And I take pictures of them because I want to prove it to people because you wouldn't believe it. But I definitely have a spirit animal, and it's the crow, and it's an awesome animal to have as your spirit animal. It's fascinating. Interesting enough, they focus on the afterlife. That's what they're known for. And so, is it any coincidence that I write books about death and the afterlife and paranormal? Probably not. It's probably my destiny, but I didn't know that until a midlife crisis. Kind of like seeing a UFO. I guess a midlife crisis is sort of like seeing a UFO. It can kind of reset you and get you on a new path. I know for me, going through that suffering was not fun, but I am now grateful for that suffering because I'm grateful for where I am now in my life. And so long live the crows, and may they continue to follow me everywhere I go.
That's well said right there. So we actually have some breaking news. Jonathan, we're talking to Jonathan Fink, author of The Baseball Gods Are Real, Volume 3, The Religion of Baseball, specifically one of the books we're talking about tonight. And yes, breaking news at 10:19 p.m. Eastern. Listener George Winters, this ties into our UFO encounters and athletes breaking out of slumps. I did not see this, but apparently Baker Mayfield, star quarterback, or maybe I should just say quarterback, of the Cleveland Browns, apparently has just had a UFO encounter. George is now swearing to take him high in his fantasy football drafts next year. George is still seeking the elusive first fantasy football championship. And you know what? If this is true, if Baker Mayfield has just had a UFO encounter, I think that George may be onto something here.
Yeah, I would definitely draft him in your fantasy draft. That's good mojo right there. He's gonna have a big season if he sees a UFO, guaranteed. And by the way, maybe it's happened twice, but that originally happened in March 2021. I had it on my notes because it's the football gods are real too. And by the way, Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers, he saw a UFO in 2016. And how's his career been? Pretty good, right? So we all should be begging for UFOs to come visit us, I think, because there's some kind of good luck mojo. There's something there. But yeah, well done on that Baker Mayfield one. That was awesome. He was leaving dinner with his wife, and he put on Twitter, "Is anyone else seeing this? What I'm seeing?" And other people saw it. So It was real.
Now, if
Pretty
we
cool.
could just get a UFO to head toward Dallas.
Yeah.
My Cowboys back on track.
Love it.
Matt Prescott, if you're
man,
listening,
that's funny.
you're a Mississippi man. I know you've had some unexplained encounters. We need to tap into that.
Well, you guys know I'm from Kansas City.
Yeah,
I'm a Chiefs fan. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And in my volume,
I'm actually a Chiefs fan too.
Was that right? Right on.
Smitty, you're a Chiefs fan?
Yeah.
I don't. Funny.
Yes,
I don't
I've been
recall that ever.
since
I've
they
known
had
Smitty for like 20 years. I don't recall any mention of the Chiefs ever.
Explain,
in
Smitty. Explain
previous
yourself.
history.
I don't know. I just started being a Chiefs fan when they had old Christian Okoye, the Nigerian nightmare.
Yes.
And I've got
How do I
tons
get
of
myself
Chiefs
one of those nicknames? That's
cards
the
up
real
there.
question.
So, and they got Montana, and Derek Thompson was like one of my favorite defensive ends of all time. And then he got killed in that car wreck. Or it was Derek Thomas. Yeah, Derek Thomas.
Derek Thomas, that's right. Yeah. Tragic.
Mhm.
Like the Birdman. Tragic.
So I have a question. I have a question for Tim and Smitty. As I was
Okay.
reading this book, so Jonathan, don't answer yet. I'm going to give you your moment to explain all of this. But
Let's do this.
were you guys aware of all of the connections with the number 108
No.
in terms of baseball and religion?
Well, this is a matter of synchronicity here because, as Jonathan points out in his book, the Susan Sarandon character in Bull Durham used to be religious, or actually used to not be religious, until one or the other, until she realized that there were 108 stitches in the baseball. And I used to work for the Durham Bulls, and that was
No
my
way.
league experience. That's right.
That's awesome.
CJ and I both live right down the road from the Durham Bulls. A fantastic minor league experience. We were just reminiscing about our favorite minor league experiences, including the Montgomery Biscuits, home of Monty, the anthropomorphized buttermilk biscuit, which they shoot into the stands, wrapped in tin.
They actually shoot biscuits out of a T-shirt cannon into the stand. So, of course, they are in tinfoil. So, it's pretty good experience.
So, unlike Smitty, I would say yes to some degree. I was aware of this phenomenon on some level.
Well, I guess
I was
had
not.
heard
I had no idea. So, Jonathan, tell us, because this, for me, reading the book really, really stuck out. Tell us all of the connections between the number 108 and baseball and religion and all of the things that you found.
Well, I don't know if this is a synchronicity per se, but because you guys have not read my very first book, The Baseball Gods Are Real, a true story about baseball and spirituality. But this is page 1. It's the introduction. It goes like this. In Bull Durham, a 1988 comedy about a minor league baseball team directed and written by Ron Shelton, the movie starts with a narration from the baseball-loving character Anne Savoy, played by Susan Sarandon. Quote, I believe in the Church of Baseball. I've tried all the major religions and most of the minor ones. I've worshipped Buddha, Allah, Brahma, Vishnu, Siva, trees, mushrooms, and Isadora Duncan. I know things. For instance, there are 108 beads in a Catholic rosary, and there are 108 stitches in a baseball. When I learned that, I gave Jesus a chance. But it didn't work out between us. The Lord laid too much guilt on me. I prefer metaphysics to theology. Beautiful. Now, the best part about that quote is the number 108 is critical because it's also how I coined the term, the baseball gods are real. So John Perrin, who's the pitcher who's on my cover, I explained how we met. He became my apprentice. He became my son's pitching coach. And one time we were at a pitching session, and it was a couple of dads were next to us, and Nate had just finished with John, and we were just chit-chatting, and some made a comment about superstition. And then the father said, oh, you don't believe in that stuff, do you? And I said, sir, John, tell this man the baseball gods are real, right? And that's how the expression came. And his reply was, there's 108 stitches on a baseball and 108 beads on a rosary. And by the way, there are also 108 beads on a yoga bracelet for meditation and prayer as well. So the number 108 transcends. And I also learned that in Kabbalah, Judaism, the number 108 stands for rain. And apparently rain has lots of symbolism, because when rain happens, it, of course, is not just good for the crops and leads, it's water, gives life. It also can cleanse and start anew. So the number 108 is big. And the fact that, the Cubs won their first World Series for 108 years, that's probably not right? These numerology is, well, here we go. Let's see it.
So I got hot, but I had to wear my vintage starter Cubs windbreaker. This is a classic windbreaker, just for you tonight, Jonathan. This is starter, the real deal. This is not a knockoff, and it is a windbreaker, because we used to need outerwear to protect us from the wind. So
now, can you do hip hop dance moves in that windbreaker?
What's that, Jonathan?
Can you do hip hop dance moves in the windbreaker? When I was in the 80s, when I was a kid, everyone would do breakdancing with the windbreakers,
Oh, I can worm, I can moonwalk in
nice.
that.
Oh, stop it.
A lot of stuff. So we actually have a listener, Jonathan, with some interesting connection to the number 108. Listener, Anonymous Brother, who also happens to be from Mississippi originally, like I am, and Smitty is currently in Mississippi. Did I hear one of my co-hosts laughing at Anonymous Brother? He's a longtime listener of the show. Anonymous Brother said that he managed to get his 74 Plymouth Valiant, and yes, he owns a 74 Plymouth Valiant. He bought it for $100. Maybe that was $50 too much. He managed to get his 74 Plymouth Valiant up to 108 miles per hour on County Road 108 somewhere in the Mississippi Delta. And I can tell you,
that's a synchronicity. I love it.
Absolutely. And as a Mississippian, those are the kind of things that stick out in your memory. Like, this is one of my lifetime favorite memories, So this is synchronicity for sure with Anonymous Brother.
Yeah, his comments are pretty great though.
Go ahead.
Like, I had 108 pieces of duct tape holding the exhaust pipe on, and I changed the fuel filter 108 times due to a rusted gas tank. Oh boy.
Now, so listener Edward Millikins had a question for you, Jonathan, if you're okay with a listener question.
Yeah, of course.
He wants to know, why do you think the Diamondbacks have really only put together one championship season?
Well, a lot of times it comes down to ownership and management, but I do have another alternative theory, which is baseball players don't want to play there. It's a dome stadium. It's in Arizona. Arizona is very hot in the summer. And if you think about a ball player who plays for Detroit Tigers or the Philadelphia Phillies, when it's time for spring training, they get to go to Arizona, right, where it's warm. And then they get to leave and go back to their normal lives. And so I think that people in Arizona don't want to live in Arizona in the summer, I think. So I think that maybe it's hard for them to – right. So it might be hard for them because, people don't want to live there possibly, and they're there anyway for a certain part of the year. I know, for example, just recently the Kansas City Royals, who have always been a small market, low budget team, in the last few years, players have wanted to come to Kansas City because Dayton Moore, the general manager, is such a good person. He actually took a pay cut to make sure that every minor league player got paid during the pandemic, where the New York Yankees, which are worth $5 billion, they cut 45 minor leaguers because they couldn't pay them. What? And Dayton Moore, the guy's a saint. He takes his own salary, gives it up for these guys. And so when we signed, Carlos Santana, for example, from the Indians, everyone was like, how do we get Carlos Santana? And the answer was, he wanted to play here. So I think that staff, the managers, the GM, the ownership, that's part of it. Also the location. Believe me, Kansas City is not, we don't have an ocean. We don't have mountains. It's probably not the first place people want to live, but they want to play for the Royals because it's a good culture. So I don't know the Arizona culture. Maybe it's not a good culture or whatever, but superficially, I think it's maybe because of the Arizona thing, the dome thing, maybe I can't think of the last time they've paid a big contract to anybody. So maybe they're responsible with their money. They don't pay out big. And what the Yankees and teams do. So those are probably some of the reasons. But I got to be honest. The future for the Diamondbacks does not look good. Their pitching looks good. They only have about two stars left in their lineup, and it could be 500 season for a couple years to come, I'm afraid. So so that's my take on the Diamondbacks. But
I have another theory for you.
Sure.
I have another theory on why the Diamondbacks aren't great, Jonathan.
And this is more synchronicity, by the way, because one of our hosts actually lived in Arizona for a while.
I did, yeah. I lived in Arizona for 4 years. I've been to that stadium many times, but even more synchronicity here. Before you joined us, we were talking about our baseball connections, and my first ever job was at a minor league baseball stadium, the Lancaster Jethawks, which were the Arizona Diamondbacks.
You're talking
and
to the
I was
Jethawk.
their mascot a time or two, the Kaboom, the Jethawk himself. And now they no longer exist, and the Diamondbacks are terrible. So I'll let you read it into that however you please.
There you go. There you go. I like it. You're onto something, CJ.
I've actually been to the Kansas City Stadium. I saw George Brett play there. So that was pretty neat.
So one of our
and it's a great park, right? You were impressed with the K, right? Smitty,
oh, it's beautiful, man. It's unbelievable how beautiful it is. You know, and baseball is really meant to be played in the sunshine. It's meant to be played in the natural type of environment, you know, and
yes,
I think that has a lot to do with it. Arizona doesn't have that mecca kind of like Wrigley Field or, you know, Boston with a big green monster and that type of thing. It's just totally different. And now San Francisco Stadium, which sits right there on the bay, you know, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think one of our listeners had an additional theory. I believe this is in regards to the Diamondbacks. And we're talking to Jonathan Fink, author of The Baseball Gods Are Real. And I believe in Volume 3, The Religion of Baseball, you talk about curses. And listener George Winters, I encourage you to check this book out. George, he believes it is the curse of the swimming pool. So I think that's Arizona, right? Isn't that Arizona?
Yep. I like that.
What's
I like
the curse of the swimming pool? The
fact the stadium has one. Maybe it's a distraction. It's bad luck, perhaps.
Oh, it does have a swimming pool. That's
but
right.
How do you get those seats? That's what I want to know. How do you get the swimming pool seats?
I don't
and
know.
If you got them, would you actually swim in the pool during the game?
I don't think I would.
People did.
People do.
People absolutely did. Yeah. And at the Lancaster Jethawks, when I worked there was a hot tub, like one of those standalone hot tubs that people could like buy tickets to be in the hot tub at the game. So
I love it.
Clearly their priorities were in the wrong place.
I was trying to think. I saw was that the Diamondbacks? Maybe that was the Marlins where they got the guys from Tank to go on there and make the big tank where they had all the fish and everything. That was pretty neat. That was the Marlins Stadium, I think.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, I wanted to ask you something. What is your favorite stadium? And part B of that question, which Major League stadium do you most want to visit that you have not been to yet?
Well, my favorite stadium, I mean, if I said Kauffman Stadium, that would not be fair, right? It's my home stadium. It would have to be Dodger Stadium in LA. Such a beautiful park, such a great atmosphere. I've been there a couple times. My baseball god adventures. My pick is Dodger Stadium in LA. And then as far as stadiums that I'd like to visit, you know, the new stadium in Arlington, Texas, Globe Life Park. My son Nate was invited to the TCU baseball Future Frogs camp for 8th graders in January. We were down in Fort Worth for that weekend, and we drove to the stadium, and it's incredible because the old stadium is still there and it's beautiful. You can't imagine why they would have to replace it with another new stadium. But the new stadium, Globe Life Park, you know, I think it's $1 or $2 billion to make. It looks just absolutely incredible. So I was able to drive around it, but I didn't get to go in it and see a game. So that's where I like to see a game, is in Arlington, Texas, Globe Life Park.
Also, Los Angeles, of course, City of Angels. That could be one of your draws.
Oh, absolutely. I've been to that stadium a long time ago.
So, Jonathan, what's one of your favorite minor league experiences?
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned the Montgomery Biscuits, right? If you notice right here, this one right here, that's the Biloxi Shuckers from Biloxi, Mississippi. And my friend John Perrin, at the time, he was playing in the minor leagues for the Brewers with Double-A Biloxi. So I watched every game that team played. So I watched the big games against the Montgomery Biscuits. But so I watched the Biloxi Shuckers for 2 seasons. Every game they played. And I went down to Mississippi. I went to the stadium, and it's interesting because so many of the players on that Double-A team from 2017, guys like Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns, Freddie Peralta, they're all now household names with the Brewers. They all made it to the show. It's really remarkable. Taylor Williams who's now with San Diego. Jorge Lopez with the Baltimore Orioles.
Wow.
Yeah, Maurice Dubon, who's with the San Francisco Giants. He was their shortstop. So like that whole team was like a minor league all-star team at the time that John played with them. And so they will always be my favorite minor league baseball team because when John was pitching for them, that's when our friendship really blossomed, and his apprenticeship became formal. That was down in Biloxi where he said, "Hey, can I work for you part time while I'm still grinding as a baseball player?" I'm like, "Absolutely, you're ready." And so I'll always love Biloxi, Mississippi, and I'll always have a cherished warm heart for the Biloxi Shuckers. And it's really fun to watch those players continue to, and I look forward to the next, we'll see if my son makes to the show and where he plays. That'll become my next minor league favorite team. But for now, yeah, Biloxi Shuckers at that stadium, I didn't like catch a ball or anything like that, but just watching, my future employee pitch in a real life baseball game, someone who I met in a restaurant when he was busting tables, and I helped this kid, not even knowing who he was, and then here we are, a year later, and I'm watching him pitch. That was surreal, and that will always be one of my probably, favorite baseball god moments. It wasn't a miracle or paranormal. It was just, that Nachas feeling, that feeling, that warm heart feeling, like, wow, this, this person I became friends with, who I'm helping mentor his career, wow, he had a ticket waiting for me at the game, and we're going out to dinner after the game. And like, this guy works for me now. It's just, how did that even happen? It's just so incredible. And so I'll always love the Shuggers, and I'll always be grateful to John Perrin. We're still friends. We still stay in touch. He has got a full-time job now working for a new investment firm, and I'll forever be grateful to him because he made my son a great baseball player, and he was the catalyst for my book series. I don't think if my friendship with John happened, would I had written that first book. And now 5 books later, it's such a big part of my life. It's an important part of my life. I'm forever grateful to John because he helped make that happen.
That's amazing. And, the synchronicity really continues here. Smitty lives in Mississippi. I'm from Mississippi, grew up there my whole life. Listener Anonymous Brother actually lived in Biloxi for quite a while, if I remember correctly. So it's just really crazy that you would say Biloxi, and Smitty spent time in Biloxi. I know.
Yes.
I've had
the South Carolina and the Mississippi. By the way, there's 2 of those right there. That's bizarre. By the way, guys, forgive me. I don't have the cord of my laptop here with me, and I'm seeing that I'm in the red. So I don't want this to cut off before we can formally part ways. So maybe 1 or 2 more questions, then we'll wrap up so we don't end on a bad note.
That sounds good. So for those that haven't read your books yet, and you've got 3 on baseball and 2 on music and more to come, what would be the number 1 takeaway that you would want somebody to experience when reading your stories?
It's a great question. I once was with a friend and an acquaintance, and I asked him, "Hey, what do you think of that? My new book?" He's like, "Why don't you ask me how did the book make you feel instead?" I'm like, "Interesting. How did the book make you feel?" And so my answer to that question is, I want people to feel love and light when they read my books. I want my books to give hope and happiness and joy. I want my books to entertain people. And I hope when people finish my books, it's done the job as being a Trojan horse for spirituality. I realize that my books are about baseball and music, and that might be the reason why people might initially read my books. But ultimately, there's a mission with my books. They're about spirituality. And so I hope people come away from reading my books feeling enlightened.
Love that. All right, Tim or Smitty, do you guys have any other questions before we sign out?
No, I really enjoyed it though. It's been very interesting, and of course, I'm a big baseball fan from a long time ago, especially, and I I actually plan on writing a book sometimes about the last 5 pitchers who's won 30 games, because that will never happen again in the history of baseball the way it's set up now.
It's a good
unless
idea.
they change the rules. And
Go with it.
that's pretty
I'll publish
interesting.
That's
Huh?
awesome.
Oh yeah, this has been great, Jonathan. I really appreciate you coming on the show with us. I loved your book, The Baseball Gods Are Real, Volume 3, The Religion of Baseball. I encourage all sports fans, all paranormal fans, if you're into UFOs, if you're into ghosts, if you're into sports, if you're into drama, if you're into baseball, pick this book up. It is phenomenal. It is amazing. It's a quick read because you really want to turn the page and get to the next chapter and see what's about to happen next. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you coming on the show. I think we talked a lot about synchronicity tonight. I could feel it in the show, a lot of great vibes. I hope that you'll come back on with us one day. I would love to pick your brain on some baseball current events and
I'd love to.
scandals and things happening in today's baseball, from steroids to the Astros scandal to replay to how Major League Baseball is handling COVID. But we can save all that for another time. But I bet you have some great thoughts on all those topics.
I'll be ready to speak anytime you want, man. That was beautiful. I'm in. Count me in.
That's great.
Guys,
Well,
thank
I
you so much
give
for
the
having me.
book two thumbs up. So
I appreciate it. May the baseball gods always be with you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Be well, guys. Take care.
Take care.
thank you.
Smitty, you want to
Why are you
formally take
still
us
awake?
out now? And I'm going to end the recording.
Yes. This is All Things Unexplained. Please tune in. Go to Twitter. Go to Facebook. We have our own website. Just like us, give us a review, and thank you for listening.
Thanks. We even got our own website. Big time.